Hello friends. Because I'm one of those weird people on the internet who makes videos of things that I like and talks about them, I've been put into a really privileged position. I get to spend as many hours as a human can reasonably spend scrolling around and looking for new video games, be that in my email or one of the various platforms where you can buy video games. But I've encountered a roadblock over the past few years. I'm extremely picky. And perhaps this is because I'm getting older, having reached my 30s, or because I've simply spent years honing my taste in video games and wanting some very specific things filled. You could say that I have some very specific tastes that I've honed over a very long career. It also makes it very difficult for me to throw wads of cash at games that I kind of know I'm not gonna like just from the get-go. Or alternatively, you have things that I do like about them, but then end up being bothered by future decisions that they make as time goes on. So it's pretty rare that I grab a game and latch onto it, but when I do, oh boy, it's something I stick with. And having spent many hours looking at the coming soon lists of games on Steam, I've gotten kind of depressed recently, because there's very few games that I'm excited for. Frankly, I think that people just don't make games for me anymore, or I often feel that way. But in this video, I want to highlight a game that I'm actually very excited for, something that I've been waiting for the better part of the last 10 years. And oddly enough, it's not even an original game. It's a remake of a fan game, of a first-person shooter that released in 1993. It's hard for somebody to play video games and exist on this planet without having played, or at least seen, the play of Doom. E1M1 is burned into my consciousness, and quite frankly, it's impossible for me to forget. I played through that early episode many times at a friend's house, and also played some multiplayer deathmatch back when I was a child. Those early levels are stuck in my memory, and that's something I will hold dearly for the rest of my life. Because as a child, I was very limited on the games I had access to. My parents were quite picky about things like violence in video games, so I was personally limited to games like Age of Empires, things that had a historical bent, and didn't exist purely for first-person visceral violence. This is how I discovered roguelikes, games like Angband and NetHack, and later on games like Tome and Caves of Cud. But in the early days, there was one pivotal game that truly got me into the genre of traditional roguelikes, and it was Doom, the roguelike, also known as DoomRL. Originally created as a joke by solo Polish developer Cornell, I'm not even going to try and pronounce your last name, sir. Doom the Roguelike was a skin of the original Rogue, replacing all of its magical items and spells and scrolls with shotguns and double damage power-ups. After Cornell had put it together, he shared it with some friends as a joke, and then as time went on, eventually it was polished up. With gorgeous sprite work created by Derek Yu, who would eventually go on to make Spelunky, Doom the Roguelike released for free, and quickly acquired a small fanbase that admired the novel concept. But because Doom the Roguelike used an IP that it honestly didn't have the rights to use outside of a fan project, the game was free, and shared around between fans. Because it wasn't as obtuse as a lot of traditional roguelikes, I found the game quite easy to get into as a smaller kid, and played quite a bit of it on the easier difficulties. And frankly, I loved it. And because it was free, and didn't have the obvious first-person violence of the original Doom, I was safe to play it to my heart's content, outside of the prying eyes of my parents. However, you can't pay for groceries with nothing but goodwill and fans. So Cornell kept his day job, and continued releasing fan projects under the name Chaos Forge. Cornell made a game based on Aliens, a game based on Berserk, and a game based off of Diablo, which continued to satisfy his small fan base of supporters. But Doom the Roguelike released in 2003, and it would be quite some time before Cornell would see any kind of paycheck from this video game. But in 2016, Chaos Forge started a Kickstarter.
Oh, Jupiter, which art now hell, hallowed be thy pain. Thy victims come.
Hi, I'm Karol Kisielewicz.
Oh, that's how you say it. Well anyways, the Kickstarter was for Jupiter Hell, a modern reimagining of Doom the Roguelike. After the Kickstarter launched, it wasn't gaining much traction, but then they got a cease and desist from ZeniMax telling them to take down all content related to Doom the Roguelike, and thus the game has been renamed DRL, and Cornell did the obvious thing, which is he open sourced it, and removed all mention of Doom from the original game, so you can still play it to this day, for free. This was probably the best thing to happen to the Kickstarter, because it generated quite a lot of buzz around the game, and the project just barely met its funding goals. Jupiter Hell eventually worked its way through early access and has become quite an awesome game in its own right. But I feel like I'm burying the lead here, because this video is titled, The One Roguelike That I'm Actually Really Excited For. And that's because DRL is returning. And no, I'm not talking about that free version that's open source on his website that you could go download right now. Doom the Roguelike is being remade, in Free Pascal, like the original one was, but using theming from the spiritual successor. Enter Jupiter Hell Classic. Frankly, this is something I couldn't imagine doing myself. Imagine going back and working on something that you largely built decades ago, modernizing it, updating it, while in the process also updating the original open source version. one with a new theme and art and music, and the other getting compatibility and feature updates. Now, on one hand, I'm really excited about this because I can now go play an updated version of Doom the Roguelike on my computer. And because I spent a lot of hours playing the spiritual successor, DoomRL, I now have a new game to play. So let's have a look at the original that's been updated, and then of course the upcoming successor. I recommend you try both. And if you'd like to help out games like this, the easiest way to do that is by chucking it on your wishlist. And no, this isn't sponsored, I just really like this video game. Oh, Doom. There's nothing quite like you. Obnoxiously loud, shotguns, and screaming demons. Doom the Roguelike does a phenomenally good job of recapturing the atmosphere of the original Doom, as it simultaneously transforms it into a turn-based strategy game. After naming your character and selecting your difficulty, you're presented with a series of traits. After selecting one of these traits, you can move on and begin your run of slaughtering demons. However, these traits indicate a decision that you have made at the start of the game. What direction do you want this character to go? You see, Doom the Roguelike has a pretty strict structure. This isn't a giant open world. It's a dungeon crawler in the traditional sense. There is one dungeon, or in this case, retracing the steps of the original Doom, as in you're traveling around the different regions of Mars and the demonic infestations within. The reason the decision of the starting trait is critical is because you're working towards one of the bottom 5 traits. These traits have prerequisites. You need to unlock the prerequisite traits and avoid the traits that block it. These subclasses, or master traits, pretty drastically change the playstyle of your character, so it's wise to have some idea of what you're building towards beforehand, because this will also indicate what weapons you want to select. But before you select your trait, you also get to select your class. These classes have different subclasses, or master traits, meaning each class has a minimum of 5 playthroughs to see all the different playstyles, and the gameplay can vary pretty wildly. But for this video, we're going to be playing as the Marine, and the subclass, or master trait I'm going for, is Army of the Dead. And the reason for this is in DoomRL Classic, the current build only has one class, which is the Marine. When DoomRL Classic releases in August, it will have all 3 classes. But for now, we're limited to just one. And the reason I chose Army of the Dead as my subclass to go for is it was just the first one I had success with while recording. And if you're sitting there watching this YouTube channel and thinking to yourself, but blind, this channel is for Dwarf Fortress content. Don't worry, Doom the Roguelike gets it. But let's talk about shotguns and aesthetics. Traditional roguelikes have to do a lot with a little, and Derek Yu's sprite work is phenomenal. Doom the Roguelike manages to have a lot of variety in its environments, and allows you to completely cover it in blood. The environments are destructible, the weapons are easy to distinguish at a glance, hazards are also equally obvious, and can be spread around by the player. Things like acid sometimes appear in the levels, and can also be spilled out of explosive barrels, and the pickups do a very good job of invoking the original Doom, from the health orbs to the different styles of armor, keeping the aesthetics of what you have equipped nice and clear. The Doom-inspired soundtrack also kicks, and the sound of the shotgun is unmistakable. For the dungeon itself, the different colored stairways indicate different pathways, which can have different types of item drops and resource scarcity. Of course, this is also determined by the difficulty. If you set it to easier, you're going to find a lot more power-ups lying around and health packs. Once you learn the levels, this gives the player some agency over the style of build they create, and a degree of expectation of what you're up against. The branching paths allow for quite a bit of variety and replayability. Of course, all of this structure is going to be replicated in the remake, but more on that later. Most of the areas are randomly generated, and some of them have handcrafted elements, specifically the boss fights and challenge rooms, which of course invoke levels from the original Doom. And some of these levels also include switches. You can pull these switches, and this can change the context of a level. Sometimes it'll help the player, and other times it'll hinder them. And the UI is simple but effective, displaying health, experience, and your currently equipped armor and weapon at the bottom of the screen, and of course the level that you're currently on. When it states that you feel somewhat safe, you know all the enemies are dead and you can freely explore. The game has keyboard control as well as mouse control, and the remake includes full controller support. I think that that's targeted directly at the Steam Deck users. And as for progression, as you journey through the dungeon and move further down, your character earns experience points. These can then be spent on those traits that were mentioned at the beginning. When you hit level 6, if you have the correct traits, you can then unlock your master trait. And as I said before, I've chosen Army of the Dead. The prerequisites allow me to reload my shotguns and rocket launchers by simply moving from tile to tile, which speeds things up quite dramatically. An Army of the Dead essentially turns my shotguns into sniper rifles, allowing me to pre-fire at shadows and destroy enemies, and the rocket launcher allows me to destroy walls and make things go boom, which never really gets old. Weapons can be upgraded, and so can your armor, and so can your boots. This is accomplished by finding weapon modifiers within the world. These include agility, power, and tactical upgrades. Obviously, you don't want to use the agility upgrades on your gun, but they can be quite helpful on your armor to remove debuffs, and power modifications are pretty effective on armor and weapons, so save those agility upgrades for your boots. I eventually upgraded my shotgun using power modifiers from 8d3 damage to 12d3 damage, giving it the name the Elephant Gun. Armor can break down as it takes damage, so be cautious when that percent gets too low. It can be repaired when you find armor pickups within the world, so it might be wise to keep a spare set of armor in your inventory and swap when the percentage gets too low, so that you can then repair your upgraded armor with a repair kit. Weapons lying on the ground can be unloaded for extra ammo, but I don't see you running out of ammunition anytime soon, unless you're playing on the higher difficulties. This little roguelike is truly a love letter to the original Doom. id Software liked this fan game so much that they allegedly created their own spin-off, DoomRPG. It was available on phones. It took the assets for Doom and made them into an RPG dungeon crawler. Unfortunately, now it's only playable through an emulator. Doom the roguelike was very important for its time, and takes about an hour to complete, and you're encouraged to try again on a new class, perhaps on a higher difficulty, so you can optimize your run and get the highest score possible. And it's a game that I have a lot of nostalgia for, and especially now that it's getting patched again, it ages very well. But now I think it's time for us to move on to its successor, DoomRL Classic, so we can find out what kind of changes and improvements have been made to the original. So let's dive in to this demake of a remake of an unmake, or as I like to put it, a remaster of a fan game based on the universe of the developers reimagining. On its surface, DoomRL Classic is a one-to-one skin of Doom the roguelike, but when you dig a little deeper, you start to notice changes. The first thing that I noticed was when I was building my character. There's now no longer restrictions on what skills you can take in order to get a specific master trait or subclass. The 3 classes remain, and Cornell, the developer, says he's going to add more. Alongside of the restrictions on the master traits being removed, a lot of the other traits are different or have been rebalanced to better emulate DoomRL. However, in my experience, this does lead to a wider build variety and more options for the player. And of course, the other 2 classes have their own unique traits as well, meaning playstyle variety is still going to be just as varied as it was in Doom the roguelike. And because a lot of this is similar to what it was in Doom the roguelike, I'm going to be running through a lot of things, so once I select my initial trait and my difficulty, I name my Jupiter guy instead of Doom guy. The initial starting room feels more like a demake of DoomRL, instead of trying to invoke the surface of Mars, including the little dropships that are on fire, and the basic level layouts. Once you enter the initial zone, you will see that the level generation is quite similar to Doom the roguelike, if not identical. These games are most definitely sharing the majority of their DNA. Everything about this version of the game feels more polished. It's like everything's had a bit of a glow up. The primitive UI from Doom the roguelike has been overhauled and designed to invoke DoomRL, using similar font work and UI design. Personally, this is great, because I always found that the UI in DoomRL was nothing short of fantastic. This goes for the inventory screen, the resistances screen, and the skill trees. Everything just looks and feels better, and I can't stress enough. Derek Yu's sprite work for the original Doom the roguelike was fantastic. However, the game has a lot more juice now. Everything has a couple of extra frames of animation. Our little Jupiter guy idly moves, as if patiently waiting for the player to make their next decision. Everything still feels detailed and clear and immediately readable at a glance, managing to feel familiar, yet different. On the initial impression, if I were to say that I'm disappointed by anything, it's the fact that DoomRL Classic is using the exact same soundtrack as DoomRL, which isn't a bad thing. I like its ripping guitars. It's what you're hearing in the background right now. But it does feel like one of the few concessions that they've made. I really hope that at some point Jupiter Hell Classic either gets its own soundtrack, or at least some variations on the originals. A lot of other things are being reused here as well, including more or less all of the sound effects. But considering it is a demake, I think that this is fitting. Personally, I would ask for something that sounds a little bit more muffled, or crunchy, so that Jupiter Hell Classic's audio sounds like a more de-resed version of Jupiter Hell, instead of just one-to-one in the audio design. But with that small gripe aside, I really like the presentation here. Readability is important, and I think that Jupiter Hell Classic nails the look, and I think they've done justice to the original art style, while also making it legally distinct from Doom. And honestly, I really like the graphics of the Reavers over the original Imps. I think the demons here just look fantastic. Health orbs are replaced by these little red circles, and health packs are replaced by these little square objects. Armor still comes in green, blue, and red, and the branching paths in the dungeon are still indicated with different colored stairs. You also get an indication of what you're going to get out of the chests based on the color, and they're very brightly defined. And of course, the levers, or switches, make a return as well. And don't forget your Doom-like power-ups, such as this one. Double damage. Doom the roguelike always liked to put the player character in precarious situations when entering the next floor, so be sure to reload your shotgun before entering a staircase because there might be something right next to you. Powering up weapons now indicates exactly what is changing right beneath the text box, and crafting higher level weapons by adding multiple power-ups to the same weapon is unchanged. Most of the tactics from Doom the Roguelike are still the same. Since I didn't cover it in the first half, I'll cover that now. Enemy health is indicated in the text feed. As they take damage, the game describes their wounds. When they're severely wounded, or mortally wounded, it's only going to take another shot to kill them. You can see projectiles that hit or miss, and some of them have AoE damage. Things like shotguns have a much higher chance of hitting, and ignore cover. It's best to hug walls, so that there's less chance that the projectiles hit you, and instead hit an immovable object, such as a rock or a wall. This makes the tactics of both versions of the game quite simple. See an enemy, back off, find cover, or alternatively, level up your dodge stats and charge them head on. Of course, the game has melee weapons as well, and if you want to build around a knife or a chainsaw, that is also an option. And while the level generation remains similar to Doom, those unique areas with challenges and boss fights are now all replicas of Jupiter Hell, such as the Anomaly, which gives an uncertain tension and then spawns toxic reavers in your face. But with a little bit of work and some confident shotgun precision, I'm able to take them out and gather the loot that is left behind. Now, I did have a rocket launcher in my inventory at the moment, and I could have fired it at them, but I resisted. Explosions can destroy gear, ammo, and chests, as well as chunks of walls, so do be cautious when firing your explosives. You might destroy a very valuable item. The in-level hazards also remain, as well as the small boxes that can be pushed around, and sometimes they have loot inside of them. Between that and the destructible environments, the game becomes quite the little sandbox to mess around in. It's no secret that I've spent a lot of time playing Jupiter Hell, and it's a game that I've grown quite fond of over the years. I did just about everything I was capable of in that game, and in theory, I could still go back for more, because there is lots of higher difficulty stuff that I have yet to complete successfully, and not for a lack of trying. Jupiter Hell Classic is my most anticipated game right now, because it's a remake of something that I'm very nostalgic for. Calling back to Age of Empires, this is sort of like when the definitive editions came out, and new expansions and content started being added to them. Because I had a great time through the early access of Jupiter Hell, and enjoyed it after release as well. I can't wait to do that again with Jupiter Hell Classic. Partially because I'm excited to play Doom the Roguelike again, and also because there's nothing quite like chess with shotguns. If you'd like to help this game out, you can add it to your wishlist on Steam. As you can see, I've done that for quite some time now. There's also a demo where you can try out the content that you've seen on screen. I was given a passcode to sneak past that content and see more. If you'd like to watch that footage, there is a recorded VOD on my Extras channel. I'll link that down in the description. Check out Jupiter Hell Classic. Try the demo. Play Doom the Roguelike, because it's free, so why not? Support indie game development, because Jupiter Hell Classic is a remake of a cult hit that I remember fondly. And if there's anything that I do on this channel, it's cover the weird things that some of us remember. Thank you very much for watching this video. Your normal dwarf content will continue shortly, so please do not panic and remain calm. If you'd like to see me stream video games on the internet, you can find me at twitch.tv/BLINDIRL or on this very YouTube channel. If you'd like to support me directly, you can do that via my blog. It's like Patreon, You can find it at blindirl.com. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you sooner than you might think.